Okay, so CMHA, Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority, they're in charge of Section 8 here in Columbus. They sent out to all the landlords that participate in the program this letter last week explaining that due to a funding shortfall, they will now be reducing payment standards from 110% of what they determined to be the fair market rent to 100% of the fair market rent. So essentially, they're cutting rent by 10%. You can read through this letter as much as you want. Basically, they're saying the adjustment's not their fault, is what they're saying. There's probably a lot of truth to that, right? They get funding from Congress, right? And Congress determines the budget. But the question is, why do they have a shortfall? And the shortfall usually means that it means that they have more expenses than they projected. Whether that means rent, they approved too many rent increases, or they approved too many new vouchers, or too many people moved in from people. You can port your voucher from one housing authority to another. It could be any of those things, all of those things, some combination. Honestly, it doesn't matter for this. It is what it is. They're reducing those costs. A couple key things in here. So it's one thing to say that moving forward on new placements that they'll reduce it by 10%. But if you look over here, down here, what scares me with this, where'd it go? What this means for new leases. For new leases, moves, or HAP contracts effective after August 1st, 2026, the updated payment standards will apply immediately. So here's the question. Are they saying that when the 1 year lease is up for your tenants, they're going to look to reduce what they're already paying you by 10%? Because that would be a major issue. Right? I can plan for new houses. I can pay less for new houses to account for the reduced rent that I'm going to get. For the people that I already have in these houses, my costs are what they are. My mortgage is what it is. My property taxes, my insurance, all that's set. So if you're going to sit there and try to cut my rent by 10%, we could have an issue. Let's forget that for now and just look at what this actually means. So I had our friend ChatGPT make me up this chart showing the comparison of what the payment standards were to what they're going to. And these are the zip codes in Columbus that I typically buy in. Most of my properties, I think all my properties are in these zip codes. And here's one thing to understand. When they say 110% of fair market rent, 100% of fair market rent, they're not correct on fair market rent. I don't know the formula to determine it, but what I can tell you is it's not right. And let's look at an example here. 43211, this very first one, 3-bedroom house. So this middle section here, let's look at what you can get. So this shows that the payment standard was $1,551. It's going down to $1,410. All right. So right off the top, they're taking $141 off what they'll pay for that zip code. But here's the thing: you have to remember this is the gross rent. With Section 8, they make you deduct what's called the utility allowance. Because if you're going to have the tenant pay utilities, they reimburse utilities and you deduct it from what they're going to pay here. Okay, and I know that in Columbus, a 3-bedroom utility allowance, if you're having them pay all utilities, assuming they're electric utilities, it's going to be $321 off that. Okay, so before, they were going to pay $1,551 minus $321, $1,230 for a 3-bedroom house. That was the old standards. That they're saying is 110% of market value. Okay, I can tell you a 3-bedroom house in 43211, you're going to get a minimum of $1,400 if it's a decent place and it's not in a complete war zone. Right? So they're already, even calling it 110%, they're already significantly under market value in that zip code. Now they're 1,410 minus 321, $1,089 for a 3-bedroom house in Linden is drastically below market value, $400 or more below market value for most of that zip code. Now, there's a formula to figure out how much they'll pay, and you can add in 10% of the tenant's income into this. Okay, so if you have a tenant that makes $3,000 a month, you can add $300 to that. Now we at least get somewhat close to market value. But a tenant that makes an average of $3,000 a month on Section 8 is pretty rare. That'd be a pretty high income for a Section 8 tenant. So most of them are going to be able to add 100 to 200 to that. So for me, 43211 almost becomes unrentable to Section 8 under these new standards. 43206, one of my favorite zip codes for Section 8. The previous standards was 1914 minus the 321. So they were paying $1,593, and then you could again add back the tenant's 10% of the tenant's income. So I was getting $1,700 to $1,800 a month for a 3-bedroom house in 43206, which is very good. That was easily 10% above market value. Now they're dropping that by $174. Okay, so big difference. This is something to pay attention to. This is just Columbus, but I know from the Section 8 groups I'm in, this is hitting all over the U.S. There are multiple housing authorities that are in what they call funding shortfall. My hope is that this is just temporary to try and get through this year, and hopefully we get new funding, more funding approved for next year. They just allowing less new people into it, whatever it takes. I don't know. Maybe stop giving their employees Tesla company cars. True story. An inspector recently showed up in a brand new Tesla and told me it was a company car. But I don't know. This makes doing Section 8 significantly more difficult. I will have to pay less for houses to make these numbers work in most cases. So I'll make the adjustments that I can, hope that they don't reduce the leases already in place, and hope for the best. I'll let you know if there's any updates.